Something doesn't feel right outside the house. I haven't left my house in a few years. I've lost count of exactly how many, to be honest. After the first few months, it stopped bothering me. I didn't really feel the need to go outside. What's out there for me? In here, I'm well fed, comfortable, entertained, and safe, a combination I'd never have if I stepped out. Lately, though, I felt strange. There's this weirdness whenever I get near anything that leads out, windows or doors. It's hard to describe. You know that feeling when you're being watched so intently that it's as if your clothes don't exist and your thoughts are written on your forehead? It's like that, but it gets stronger the closer I get to looking out. At first, I blamed it on anxiety. Maybe my mind was just messed up after not seeing the sun for so long. But I don't think I see sunlight coming through the windows anymore. The tape doesn't help, of course, but you'd imagine at least some light would slip through, right? Then there's the food. I remember ordering most of it at the beginning. Somehow, I always had the money. But at some point, my orders stopped going through, and yet food kept showing up inside the house. You'd think that would be a red flag, but it didn't bother me. Free food? Who wouldn't be happy? That thought process felt liberating, right up until the feeling I mentioned started. The food began showing up less often. When it does, even touching it feels dirty. The consistency is fine, but there's this prickling at the back of my head, as if I were handling radioactive waste. I've started noticing how different I look. Hunger has stripped me down. I can feel my bones with every touch. My sunken cheeks make me look like a blinking corpse. I barely have energy to do anything else. It's been 3 days since the last food arrived. Hunger finally slapped me out of my stupor. I've tried looking up what's happening in my city or the world, but there are no related news. It's as if everything is normal outside. But how does that make sense? The dread from every opening in my house grows each day. I might be hallucinating from hunger. I see shadows and curious figures from the corner of my eyes every time I turn my head. So I decided to remove the tape and finally look outside one of my windows. There's no window behind the tape. It's a wall. They're all walls behind the tape. I don't think there's any point in discussing this. I don't think I have the time to figure out any other solutions before hunger makes me unable to even act. I know the door is not a wall. I've felt its texture many times since this began. So I will open the door today. I decided to write this in case hunger takes me, or if the outside takes that first. If I survive, I'll get back to you all. Farewell. For the past 6 nights, someone has been outside my house, and I don't think they've ever left. This is going to sound strange, but I don't know where else to post it. I live alone, and nothing like this has ever happened here before, which is why it's starting to really get to me. About 6 nights ago, I was lying in bed around 12:30 a.m., scrolling on TikTok like usual. Nothing felt off, but when I tried to sleep, I just couldn't. I tossed and turned for at least 40 minutes, trying to get comfortable, and that's when I started hearing this loud thudding noise from outside on the street. At first, I thought it was random, someone dropping something heavy or messing around, but it didn't stop. It was constant, loud, like someone was repeatedly slamming something heavy onto the ground. It woke me up completely. I sat up and went to the window. What I saw didn't make sense. There was a figure standing in the middle of the street, holding what looked like a long, heavy bag, lifting it and slamming it down over and over again. Even from my window, something looked wrong. The shape of the bag kept shifting slightly. I tried to convince myself I was just tired and overthinking, so I went back to bed, but the noise kept going. After another half hour, a neighbor shouted from their window, "Shut up, will you?" But it didn't change anything. The thudding carried on like nothing had happened. At some point during the night, one of my neighbors, someone I'm actually close with, messaged me asking, "Do you see and hear that person too?" I replied yes. He said he was thinking about going out to check if the person was okay. I had a really bad feeling about it, but I didn't tell him not to go. I just said, "Keep me updated." About 10 minutes later, I saw him leave his house. I went back to bed, waiting for a message. Then suddenly, the thudding stopped. The silence was so abrupt, it felt worse than the noise. Then it started again. I looked outside and the figure was still there, but something had changed. The bag looked different, bigger, heavier, darker in places. My neighbor was nowhere to be seen. That's when I stopped trying to make sense of it. I put on noise-cancelling headphones and eventually fell asleep, telling myself I was just exhausted. When I woke up, I checked the time. It was 12 a.m. I had somehow slept through the entire day. At first, I thought my schedule was just thrown off, but then I heard the thudding again, straight away. Later that night, I saw another neighbor come out, this time holding something like they were ready to confront the person. I watched from my window. After a while, the figure was still there. The noise hadn't stopped, and the street felt emptier than before. I fell asleep again. When I woke up, it was midnight again. That's when it started to actually get to me. It's been about 6 days now. Every time I sleep, I wake up at night. I haven't seen daylight since this started. The thudding is still going every time I wake up, and it sounds louder now, like it's getting closer. I've only got enough food left for maybe a week, and I don't really know what I'm supposed to do next. Whatever that thing is, it hasn't left the street. And I'm starting to feel like it knows I'm still inside. I think the dog I adopted was waiting for something to follow me home. I didn't plan on getting a dog. I just got tired of coming home to nothing. I live alone, work long shifts, and most days I'm too drained to do anything but sit on the couch and scroll until I fall asleep. I figured a dog might help. Something alive in the apartment besides me. That's how I found Leo. The shelter staff told me he wasn't really a stray, more like a regular. He'd been hanging around the same neighborhood for years. People fed him, shop owners knew him. One of the workers even joked that he probably knew the area better than most residents. The weird part, everyone said the same thing. He just sits there. Apparently he'd stay on the same corner for hours, watching cars, watching people, like he was waiting for someone. He didn't bark, didn't beg, didn't approach anyone unless they approached him first. I told myself he was just calm, maybe older, maybe used to people. At home, he was easy. Too easy, honestly. Sirens didn't bother him. Loud neighbors didn't faze him. He didn't even react when someone knocked on the door. The only thing that stood out was that sometimes I'd catch him staring into empty corners of the apartment. Not like a dog hearing something, but more like he was watching something. I tried not to overthink it. The night everything started, I'd just gotten home from work and passed out on the couch with the TV on. I woke up because the screen went black. The floor lamp dimmed for a second, then flickered back to normal. Then I heard something slide across the floor. Not loud, just enough to make my stomach drop. Leo was already standing at the door, staring. There was a flyer on the floor just inside my apartment. I know how that sounds. I live on the 3rd floor, no open windows, and I'm sure I locked the door. Still, there it was. Happy Tales Doggy Daycare. It looked expensive, thick paper, glossy, not something someone casually shoves under doors. I opened the door and checked the hallway. Nothing. No footsteps. No one walking away. Just quiet. I probably should have thrown it out. Instead, I kept it. It advertised a free temperament test and 1 free day of daycare. I work long hours, so the idea stuck with me. The next day, I called during my lunch break. They picked up on the first ring. The woman on the phone sounded overly excited, like she'd been waiting for someone to call. We booked an appointment for Saturday. When Saturday came, I drove to the address. It was on a road I take all the time, but somehow I'd never noticed the building before. That should have been my first red flag. Inside looked like an indoor park, fake grass, decorative trees, sunlight coming through glass ceilings. It didn't look like a daycare. It looked staged. The woman at the desk smiled at me, then looked down at Leo. "Hi, Leo." I froze. I hadn't said his name. Before I could ask, another worker came out and took him for the temperament test. When I came back to pick him up, there were 4 employees behind the desk, all smiling, the exact same way. Leo ran straight to me, dragging one of them behind him like he couldn't get away fast enough. They told me he passed, said I could bring him back any time. On the drive home, Leo didn't look out the window like he usually did. He didn't move at all. That night, I woke up to barking. Leo was standing in the hallway, teeth bared, staring at nothing. And I don't know how to explain this, but the apartment didn't feel empty anymore. And whatever had followed us home, Leo had been waiting for it. My 4-year-old drew our family this morning. There were 6 people in the picture. There are 5 of us. I want to start by saying my daughter is a completely normal kid. She's 4. She draws horses that look like lumpy clouds. She asks why the sky is blue at least 3 times a week, even though we've answered it. And her current thing is stickers. She puts them on everything. I found one on the bathroom mirror this morning. She is not a weird child. She is not an anxious child. She does not watch things she isn't supposed to watch. I want all of that on the record before I tell you what happened. She was at the kitchen table when I came downstairs. She does this every morning. Just gets herself set up with a piece of paper and her crayon box before anyone else is even awake. I'm used to walking down to find her mid-drawing, totally focused, not even noticing I'm there. I made coffee. She slid a piece of paper across the table at me without looking up. It was our house. She draws it the same every time, the same boxy shape, the same lopsided chimney in the corner that she's weirdly proud of. Our family lined up in front of it in a row. Stick figures with her little scribbled attempt at our names floating above each head. I counted the figures. 6. I have 3 kids. My wife and I make 5. I counted again, still 6. The extra figure was at the back, half tucked behind the house, like it was leaning out from behind the wall. It was taller than all the others. She'd drawn it in black crayon and pressed down hard enough that the paper had torn slightly along some of the lines. She hadn't put a name above it. I sat down across from her. "Hey," I said, "who's this one?" She didn't look up from what she was working on. "That's the one who watches from the yard," she said. I kept my voice even. "What do you mean, watches from the yard?" "At night," she said, like it was obvious. "When you turn the lights off, she stands out in the yard and watches the windows." I asked her what the figure looked like. "She," I said, because my daughter had said she without hesitating. My daughter looked up at me then. "She does this thing when she thinks you're being slow about something, where she tilts her head a little to the side. She looks like Mum," she said, "but her eyes are wrong." I picked up the drawing and went upstairs. My wife was still in bed. I sat on the edge and handed her the picture without saying anything. I watched her look at it, watched her face. She went quiet in a way that wasn't normal quiet. "I had a dream last week," she said, her voice slower than usual. "I was standing in the backyard. It was nighttime. I was looking up at the house, at the windows, looking in at all of you." She stopped for a second. "I didn't think it was a dream. We haven't said anything to the kids. I've been checking the locks at night. I don't know what else to do with this. I don't know how my 4-year-old knew what my wife dreamed, or whether she did know somehow, or whether there's something else going on that I don't want to think about too hard. The drawing is still on the kitchen table. I haven't moved it. I don't really want to touch it again." I let a kid wait in my store after closing. At 8 p.m., the automatic doors slid open and a kid with a snotty nose wandered into the pharmacy alone. It was a Thursday, which meant late-night shopping. The store wouldn't close for another hour. I didn't find it too strange. My mum had been an avid smoker and would burn through 2 or 3 cigarettes while I ran off and explored. I was stocking bottles of Blackmore vitamins in the lifestyle aisle, and his presence caught me off guard. To tell the truth, vitamin prices were getting insane, and I'd taken to swiping a bottle or 2, then fudging the sheets. The kid just stared at me, and after a stretch of silence, trying to determine whether or not he understood what he saw, he simply said, "Hello." Hi," I replied. "What are you doing?" He seemed like a polite kid, so I explained what vitamins were and why our bodies needed them. He stuck by my side while I refilled the shelves, and after a while I started handing him a few containers. Kids jump at the chance to feel useful. "Mind putting this down the bottom there?" He read the label. "Does fish oil taste like fish fingers?" "Not at all. Want to try?" I asked jokingly. I wouldn't actually give a kid medication he wasn't meant to have, even if it were harmless. "I can't swallow tablets," he said, turning red. At 9 p.m. the only sound was the hum of fluorescent lights. Everybody had left, gone home to their families. Everyone except the kid. He still followed me up and down the aisle, asking questions. I had work to do, needed to lock the doors, but I couldn't just send him outside in the dark. "Where are your parents?" I asked. It had been a full hour by now. "Bargo. I've lived here for 7 years, and I hadn't heard of a town called Bargo." "Where's that?" "Virginia." That was 2 states over. "Kid, who are you here with?" "Dave. He's my uncle." "Yeah, that's what you call your mum or dad's brother," I said. "Is he here? Is he parked somewhere nearby?" The kid shook his head. By this point, I was a little frustrated with him. He looked about 6 years old, maybe as old as 8. "Does Dave have a number?" "I'm not supposed to use the phones." I sighed, knowing what I'd have to do next. If no one showed up by 9:30 p.m., I'd have to contact the police. Wait for them to show up, and how long would that be? Nights are busier for cops. That's when people stumbled home from the bar and got into trouble. After about 20 more minutes, a portly mid-40s man in a red sweater pulled up to the store window and was looking inside. Callum, are you there?" he called. I went to the front and unlocked the door, Callum in tow. The man gripped my hand. "Thank God for you, sir. I almost had a heart attack. His parents would kill me if they knew where he was." "He's a good kid. I'm glad I could help," I said. And I had enjoyed my time with Callum. He reminded me of myself when I was a kid, but softer in his curiosity. The man put his arm around Callum's neck and yanked him into a hug. "He's a little nervous when he thinks he's low on his prescription meds. I keep telling him we still have a whole sleeve of tablets left at home." Callum and his uncle left together in his car. The man had seemed so kind, but as he opened the door for Callum, he smacked the back of his head. It wasn't until I was twisting the key in the padlock, closing down the store, that the thought occurred to me. Callum couldn't swallow tablets. The archive, I've started receiving emails. Not spam, not marketing, not scams. At least I don't think they are. I think I must be going insane. The first one arrived 3 nights ago. It was late, my kid was asleep, and I was doing what most people do before bed, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, promising myself just 5 more minutes. A notification appeared at the top of my screen. Asterisk. Subject, archive entry, verified asterisk. I nearly ignored it. It sounded like some automated work email sent to the wrong address. Still, curiosity got the better of me as always, and I opened it. The entire email consisted of 3 lines. Archive entry, verified citizen ID, redacted, status, active. That was it. No company logo, no signature, no unsubscribe button, and nothing. I deleted it and forgot about it. The next morning I woke up to another one. This time the subject line read, asterisk. Archive entry updated asterisk. I opened it while sitting on the toilet, still half asleep. I wish I hadn't. Archive entry updated height, 160 centimeters. Weight, 82 kilograms. Scar added, left forearm. I stared at the screen, then at my arm, then back at the screen. The height was correct, the weight was correct, and the scar was correct. A thickened white line running along my left forearm from an accident when I was 16. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. My first thought was that somebody had stolen my personal information. My second thought was worse. I couldn't remember ever telling anyone about the scar. Not online, not publicly, not anywhere. I checked the sender address. It was just a string of random letters and numbers. No website, no contact information. I deleted the email again. Then I spent most of the day convincing myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. A data breach? A prank? An AI-generated scam? By yesterday evening, I'd almost managed to forget about it. Then my phone buzzed and I sighed. Another email. I opened it immediately, half frustrated and half amused by this point. I wish I'd waited. Archive entry updated fracture, right wrist. I read it 3 times. My wrist wasn't broken. I was holding my phone with it, moving it normally. No bruises, no ache, nothing. I remember laughing. Gotcha. I felt relieved because there was a mistake, proof that whoever was sending these messages didn't actually know anything about me. I closed the email. A few minutes later, my son called from the lounge. He'd spilled squash on the floor. I got up to help, but tripped over the pile of shoes kicked off upon entry, laying across the hallway. F's. My fault, really. The last thing I remember before hitting the floor was hearing something crack. I left it till today to be seen. It didn't feel bad enough to really be a break. Plus, being a mum, I just don't have time. The ᴅᴏ is a fair way away. The doctor confirmed it a few hours later after the scan. A clean fracture of my right wrist. I'm writing this from the Andy waiting room. My cast is still drying. About 10 minutes ago, another email arrived. I haven't opened it yet. The subject line reads, asterisk, archive entry updated asterisk. Someone knocked on my door at 2:13 a.m. I don't usually wake up in the middle of the night, but when I do, there's always a reason. At least that's what I used to believe. 3 nights ago, I woke up suddenly and checked my phone out of habit. 2:13 a.m. That's when I heard it. A knock. Not loud, not aggressive, just a single clear knock on my front door. I froze in bed, listening carefully. I live alone and no one ever visits me, especially not at that hour. For a moment I thought I imagined it. Then it came again. Asterisk. Knock. Asterisk. Same sound, same rhythm, calm, almost polite. I got up slowly, trying not to make any noise. My heart was already racing, but I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe a neighbor, maybe someone at the wrong house. As I stepped into the hallway, I noticed something strange. The knocking stopped. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the front door from a distance. The house felt too quiet, like it was waiting. I didn't open the door. Instead, I checked the peephole. Nothing. Just darkness outside. No movement, no silhouette, no one standing there. I let out a small breath, feeling a bit stupid. Maybe it really was nothing. Maybe knock. I flinched so hard I almost stumbled back. This time it didn't come from the front door. It came from behind me, from inside the house. I turned slowly, my entire body going cold. The sound had come from the hallway wall just a few feet away. A soft, deliberate knock, like someone was on the other side. But that wall leads nowhere. On the other side of it is just empty space between my house and the neighbors. I stared at it, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The wall was slightly indented. Not much. Just enough to look wrong. And then, knock. This time the sound came from right behind the wall, closer. I backed away, unable to look away from that spot. My breathing got heavier as a horrible thought started forming in my mind. Something was inside the wall, and it knew I was there. I rushed back into my bedroom and locked the door, grabbing my phone with shaking hands. I didn't call the police. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there in silence, listening. For the next few minutes, nothing happened. Then slowly I heard it again. Not knocking this time, scratching, faint at first, then louder, like nails dragging across wood from the inside. It moved along the wall, getting closer to my bedroom. I could hear exactly where it was, tracking it as it got nearer and nearer, until it stopped, right outside my door. Everything went completely silent. I held my breath, staring at the door, waiting for something, anything to happen. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost thought it was in my head, I heard it. Can you let me out? I didn't move. I didn't answer. I stayed there until morning, too terrified to even blink. When the sun finally came up, everything felt normal again. No sounds, no scratches, nothing. I convinced myself it was some kind of nightmare. I even laughed about it later that day. But tonight, at exactly 2:13 a.m., I heard the knock again. Only this time, it came from my bedroom door.